स्वभावयोः इतरेतर भावानुपपत्तौ सिद्धायाम् तद्धर्माणामपि सूत्राम् इतरेतर भावानुपपत्तिः इत्यतः अस्मत्प्रत्ययगोचरे विषयिणे चिदात्मके युष्मत्प्रत्ययगोचरस्य विषयस्य तद्धर्माणाञ्च अध्यासः तद्विपर्ययेण विषयिणः तद्धर्माणाञ्च विषये अध्यासः मिथ्येति भवितुं युक्तम् तथापि अन्योन्यस्मिन् अन्योन्यात्मकताम् अन्योन्यधर्मांश्च अध्यस्य इतरेतरा विवेकेन अत्यन्तविविक्तयोः धर्मधर्मिणोः मिथ्याज्ञाननिमित्तः सत्यानृते मिथुनीकृत्य अहमिदं ममेदमिति नैसर्गिकोऽयं लोकव्यवहारः व्याचिख्यासि तस्य वेदान्तमीमांसा शास्त्रस्य व्याचिख्यासि तस्य इदमादिमं सूत्रम् अथातो ब्रह्मजिज्ञासा idam adimam sutram. This is the adima, the first sutra. Athato Brahma Jignasa. This is what the Sutrakara says. Atha, ataha means therefore Brahma Jignasa. Jignasa means Jnatumicha, a desire to know. Brahma Jignasa. Now therefore, not now, thereafter, therefore, a desire to know Brahma. We discussed yesterday how this statement leads us to several aspects or several things that follow in matter of course. It is called Arthikartha. So Arthat, as a matter of course, certain ideas will automatically follow. Brahma Jignasa, desire to know Brahman. As we said, in order to complete the sentence, we must supply here the verb. What is the verb that is supplied? Kartavya. Athato Brahma Jignasa Kartavya. Brahma Jignasa should be done. In as much as Jignasa or Jnatumicha, a desire to know, cannot be done because there is no will behind the desire. What can be done is that behind which the human will is involved. But that which is not within the control of the human being cannot be done by him. And therefore, if kartavya or to be done, if that is a verb to be supplied, in as much as there is correspondence of this sutra with the corresponding statement of the Upanishad, Atmavara Drashtavya Shrotavya, then Jignasa Pada, or that word Jignasa should be replaced by what we call Vicharaha. Athato Brahma Vicharaha Kartavya. Therefore, the meaning of this sutra is, thereafter, therefore, the inquiry or deliberation upon Brahman should be done. Why are they instructing us that we should deliberate upon Brahman? Vichara means deliberation or inquiry. Why should vichara or inquiry be done? For a simple reason. What does inquiry produce? Knowledge. That's all vichara or inquiry or deliberation upon a thing can produce. What is this? Ko nama bandha? What's the nature of bondage? Kasamesha agadaha? Where does it come from? Kasam pratishtha? How come it continues to be? Kasam vimokshaha? How to get liberated? what is anatma, what is atma, and so forth. When these questions arise and we investigate into the meaning of these questions, then we learn the truth about them. Thus, to learn the truth about anything requires an inquiry or a deliberation. So, when the Sutrakara or Badarayana is asking us to perform a vichara or an inquiry into Brahma, it means that, and vichara must be performed, which means that the knowledge which is the result of the vichara must be gained. So, the Sutra says knowledge of Brahman must be gained. Why should they ask us to gain knowledge of Brahman? Only when that knowledge is something to accomplish as far as we are concerned. Everyone is told to do this. That shows that knowledge of Brahman has something very significant to contribute in our life. What can knowledge do? All that knowledge can do is to dispel ignorance. Knowledge is like light, and light only dispels ignorance. That's all light does. And by way of dispelling ignorance, the light also reveals what is present. The darkness veils from our sight what is present or existing, and the light reveals to our sight what is present. Light does not produce anything new. However, by way of dispelling darkness, light does become a means for us to know what is there. And similarly also, ignorance veils from our sight, veils from our mind or our knowledge what is there, meaning Brahman. And what can knowledge do is to reveal Brahman. So, that's all that this can do. Remove the ignorance about Brahman and reveal the true nature of Brahman. Suppose that is done, so what? What is our interest in our life? What are we interested? We are interested in becoming free from bondage, or we are interested in being happy. We are interested in being complete. We are interested in being free from the sense of incompleteness, smallness, helplessness, whatever we are feeling. And that nobody has to tell us. That desire to become free or desire to become complete is a natural, uncultivated desire. So no instruction is necessary about that. However, instruction is given about desire for knowledge of Brahman. That shows that our desire to become complete must have something to do with the desire to know Brahman. That shows that the desire to become complete must really be transformed into desire to know Brahman. That is a suggestion here. Then alone your desire to be complete will really be fulfilled. And that is going to require also a certain maturity in our own mind. A maturity with reference to analyzing our own experiences as to what have we been seeking and how far have we gone with whatever we have achieved so far in our life, and how far can we go with all the potential achievements. And thus when a person discovers that any achievement is limited, and therefore what I am seeking is limitless, which must be uncreated, naste kritah krudena, that which is uncreated, nityam. Nityam means that which is permanent or lasting. That which is lasting or permanent must necessarily be that which is not created, because whatever is created is going to perish today or tomorrow. And so if I want happiness which should never come to an end, it should also be happiness which should never have been created. If I want something that should never go away, it should be that which has not come, because what comes will go away. What is created will perish. What I want is something lasting. That means that the happiness which I am seeking must also be that which must not be created. And that which is not created meaning that which must be already there. Otherwise it will be created. So what I am seeking must be already there, not created. And therefore not subject to destruction, not subject to limitations of time, and therefore not subject to any other limitations. That means it is free from all the limitations, which is Brahma. And thus what I am seeking must be already there. If it is already there and still I still feel myself limited, it means that what separates me from what I am seeking is ignorance really, and not anything else. What is the nature of distance between me and what I am seeking? The distance is in place that I must go someplace to get it. Is that distance in time that I must become something in order to get it, or I must wait for it, to die or something? Or is that distance in terms of some kind of a situation that I must create a situation or become something to get that? No. That distance between myself and what I am seeking is merely a distance in ignorance, not in time, not in place, not in condition. So ignorance separates me from what I am seeking and not time. It's not that I will wait for a million years that I will automatically become complete. Not place that I go to a certain place and I will become complete. Not a condition that I become big or whatever it is. I become tall or short or big or powerful or strong or rich that I will become complete. No. It is that I have to know completeness, and therefore it is ignorance that separates me from what I am seeking. And therefore, the bondage which I am experiencing is a product of ignorance rather than a real bondage. This is how Vedanta begins. That the sense of incompleteness is a product of ignorance, that there is no real incompleteness, there is no real limitation, that I feel limited, I feel incomplete only because of ignorance. So how can ignorance create this kind of a problem? I do not know that I am complete, but why do I take myself to be incomplete? My problem is not that I am not free, but the problem is that I am bound. Otherwise perhaps it would have been okay. The ignorance would have been bliss. But here the problem is not merely there is ignorance or absence of knowledge of completeness, but then there is what we call a notion on my part that I am incomplete. That is a problem. As I say, in deep sleep, when I don't know anything and I don't have any notions about myself, there is no problem. Not that it's a desirable state, but at least there is no problem at that time. The problem in my life is I find myself an inadequate being, an incomplete being, not up to the mark. That's the problem. How is that sense created? How can ignorance create that kind of a sense? So this must be a peculiar kind of ignorance, which is not merely absence of knowledge, but then it is that which is not a total ignorance, what you might call a partial ignorance like, which is the ideal condition for creating misconception or misapprehension. As I said yesterday, the rope that is lying in front of me, if I just don't know it at all, if there is pitch darkness and the rope is not within my sight, then there is no possibility of my committing the error of taking the rope to be snake or seeing snake where the rope is. Had there been broad daylight, then also there would have been no problem because I would know the rope as rope. But when there is a peculiar condition of what we may call semi-darkness, where the rope is seen but not recognized as rope, it is seen all right but not recognized as such, then I cannot say that I am totally ignorant about the rope because something about the rope is known. Nor can I say that I am knowledgeable about the rope because I do not know the object as rope. So this is a kind of ignorance, which therefore creates a misconception or creates a notion in my mind that this is a snake. So it is that vision of the snake which is the problem, not merely absence of vision of the rope, understand? If I did not know the rope, maybe I may be looking for a rope someplace, alright. But then I perceive a snake there, and that's what creates all the fear and difficulties in me. Similarly also, if I just did not know that I am a complete being, perhaps okay. But here, I take myself an incomplete being, there is a constant rejection of myself. All kinds of complexes I entertain about myself, a constant self-rejection. That is a problem. Always comparing myself with others, finding myself inferior or superior, and thus all kinds of complexes. Either I feel jealous of someone or I feel inadequate with reference to someone. And then this kama, krodha, lobha, this desire, anger, etc., all of these are created merely because I have all these different notions about myself. So it is this wrong knowledge about myself is what creates all this suffering in our life. Nothing else. So we must know the difference between pain and suffering. Heat and cold pleasure and pain, honor and dishonor, all of these are situations which is what we call life. But that these different situations in life create in me an anger or jealousy or self-rejection, this is what we call suffering or samsara. Sadness, that is samsara. And thus that sadness or self-rejection or anger, etc., all of these are created on account of the fact that I know myself wrongly. This is what we call viparita jnanam. Thus the problem in life is not merely ignorance, but wrong knowledge. And how can wrong knowledge be created? Like there is a wrong knowledge about the rope. That there is a rope and I know it to be snake. Something similar must be happening with reference to Atma also. And that phenomenon is called adhyasa. Atasmin tad buddhi. Asarva bhutayam rajvam sarva buddhi. Whereas rope has not even a trace of the snake. And seeing the snake where there is no snake, this is called adhyasa or adhyaropa. And similarly also, seeing kartrutva, bhoktrutva, that I am a doer, I am an enjoyer, I am subject to manusyoham, I am a man or human being, sthuloham, krushoham, gauroham, I am fat, I am lean, I am dark, I am fair, whatever. Badiroham, mukoham, that I am deaf, I am dumb, langhayami, tishtami, so that I am, so all these kind of notions that I entertain about myself, all of these are product of ignorance. And so these notions is what we call the wrong knowledge about the I. There is nothing wrong in going or eating or drinking or talking. There is nothing wrong in any of those things. There is problem to think that I am a doer, I am a goer, I am an eater, I am a talker. That is where the problem is. So problem is centered upon I, not upon anything else. By problem we mean that sadness, or what we call samsara, is only centered upon I, not centered upon anything other than I. The problem of hunger and thirst, yes, centered upon non-self. Problem of honor and dishonor, centered upon non-self. Problem of heat and cold, centered upon non-self. But problem of sadness is only centered upon I. So that is a problem which Vedanta can solve for us. The problem of hunger and thirst it cannot solve. That's not within its domain. Nor are we going to be too much bothered about it later on anyway. Because we find that hunger and thirst will be taken care of. You see, if originally I am happy, then perhaps hunger and thirst would not matter as much as they matter today. For a happy person, a lot of things don't matter. It's okay. I am able to take things in their own stride. But already I am unhappy and sad, then every little thing done outside, gets magnified. And therefore every situation in life gets magnified because internally there is that sadness, ready to just manifest itself with the slightest suggestion. And so that sadness can be removed. It is centered upon I, and I meaning from the wrong knowledge of the I, and therefore it is the right knowledge, yathartha jnanam. True knowledge about the Atma is what can eliminate that sadness, or what we call samsara, the need to be born. I am born not because I am for appeasing hunger and thirst. I am born not for anything else. I am born because I have to handle that problem of my incompleteness or sadness. If that is not there, I need not bother to go any place. Why do I want to go to some place? Because I think that there I'll be happy. 6 months are over, let us pack up and go, Swami, you must be looking forward to going to Ahmedabad, No, I don't look forward, I'm fine, you see. No, I'm sure you must be looking forward to, They insist. But you are waiting, and you pack up, fine, thinking that now that sadness or whatever it is will go away. Then you pack up again after 6 months from here, 6 months seems to be a good time, for sustenance. You can sustain that long. Anyway, all the need to change, to be born and to grow and to do various things, all of these desires arise only because I don't find myself at home in a given situation. Therefore, I am searching for a home. I am not at home in this embodiment with where I am at the moment, so let us give this up and go to some other embodiment where I will be more at home. If I am at home, perhaps there is no need to. So this so-called cycle of birth and death automatically doesn't come into picture when a person is happy. Therefore it is said, Athato Brahma Jignyasa suggests here that it is knowledge of Brahman which alone can solve the problem of self. How can knowledge of Brahman solve the problem of myself? The problem of sadness and samsara is based on the self, and here it is said, knowledge of Brahman you should gain. What does knowledge of Brahman have to do with myself? That shows that there is some relationship between Brahman and self. What can that relationship be? It is identity. These are all meanings that are derived. These are all meanings that you derive from one statement. That also suggests what? Jiva Brahma Aikyam. If by knowledge of Brahman, if problem of my samsara is solved, then it cannot be that by knowledge of one, the problem of another one can be solved. And if by knowledge of Brahman, the problem of self, samsara, atma samsara is solved, that shows that here is a suggestion again that Brahman is the same as Atma, or myself is Brahman. It is that knowledge that we have to gain. And so Vishaya is also suggested here. Or it is derived. What is Vishaya? Means subject matter of the Shastra is what? Jiva Brahma Aikyam. Identity between Jiva and Brahma. So Vishaya is also suggested here. Or it can be derived from the statement. Adhyasa also is derived, as you said. If knowledge can make me free, that shows that bondage is a product of ignorance. That was the need why Shankaracharya had to write what we call an Adhyasa Bhashya, which becomes an introduction to this sutra, and as much as this sutra is an introduction to the whole scripture, Brahma Sutra, that Adhyasa Bhashya also becomes an introduction to the whole Brahma Sutra. And if that phenomenon called Adhyasa is not understood, then this scripture will not make any sense, because we will not understand really the significance of knowledge, and it is not understood. Very often, in spite of listening to Vedanta for a number of years, we still don't understand the importance of knowledge. And therefore fascination for a lot of things continues to remain in our mind. Still some name and fame fascinate us. Still some recognition makes me happy. Still I find myself searching for those things. That shows that that point has not yet been made within me. That it is knowledge alone that can solve the problem, or that ignorance alone is the problem. So that phenomenon called Adhyasa should really be understood very well. Therefore, Acharya spent a fairly long time. This Prathama Sutra, the first sutra, it consists of 4 topics. As you said, it has 4 topics. It is an introduction to the whole scriptures and the introduction of Rupodghata. The purpose is to give all the necessary factors in order to prompt me to study the scriptures. So what does a person want to know before he or she proceeds to study? As I said yesterday, Anubandha Chatushtayam. What is the Vishaya? What is the subject matter of the scriptures? Does it interest me? Prayojanam, what is the purpose to be achieved by this knowledge? Adhikari, who is the one who is qualified to study or gain this knowledge? Am I qualified? And Sambandha, what do I have to do after gaining the knowledge? Should I go to Himalayas and do something, jump up and down, then this knowledge is settled in me? Or should I meditate? What should I do after gaining the knowledge? That also is necessary, because we will wait for that thing. Suppose I believe that sadhana is to be done yet, that I have now listened, Swamiji, Shravan ho gaya, now Manan. I am going to Himalayas to do the Mananam, which is fine. But if I think that I still have to do something after gaining the knowledge, then it will be one kind of knowledge, which requires something to be done upon. So what is the role of knowledge? What is Sambandha? that jnanam, knowledge itself, is the means, and knowledge itself becomes the end. It is a direct means for moksha and not an indirect means. That sambandha also, if it is understood, then my relationship or my attitude while I am listening to the scriptures will be of one kind. And if I think that I have to do something later on, then my attitude will be of a different kind. Okay, I'll study at home, I'll write notes, I'll do something, and then I'll do something, sadhana. But when I understand that it is knowledge which is a direct means, then I have a different reverence for it, different value for it. So this Anubandha Chatushtaya, this sutra provides. And before that, first is to establish what is Vishaya. Vishaya of Upanishad is Jiva Brahma Aikyam, identity between Jiva and Brahma. Meaning the Upanishads reveal that Jiva or the self is none other than Brahma. Jivo Brahma eva naparaha. Jiva is none other than Brahman. Jiva is Brahma alone. Well, this statement contradicts my all experiences. I know who I am. I know Kartaham, Bhoktaham, Manusyoham. I am a doer, I am an enjoyer, I am a human being, I am a man, I am husband, I am wife. All kinds of things I know about myself. And Upanishads say that I am Brahman, Tattvamasi, you are Brahman. Now that completely contradicts my own experience. Now how can it be? If indeed I am Brahman, indeed I am limitless, how do I take myself to be a limited being? To explain our experiences, we cannot dismiss our experiences. So, no, you don't understand anything, you listen. Then he cannot. We must first understand. You say that I am limitless, but I find myself limited in every way. How can it be? There is a need to understand that. How does the sense of limitation arise? That kartrutva, bhoktrutva, the doership, enjoyership, happiness, I am happy, I am unhappy. How these kind of notions or concepts arise in me? Then it is to be explained by what we call the phenomenon of adhyasa. That there is something called adhyasa, a superimposition between Atma and Anatma, self and non-self. What is adhyasa? Superimposing one thing upon the other. As in the famous example of the rope and snake, we superimpose the rope and its attributes upon the snake, and superimpose the snake and its attributes upon the rope. So as we said, that karvesha that a snake enjoys belongs to the rope. I think that the snake is there, so the snake is very real for me. The reality that the snake enjoys belongs to the rope. I think the snake is there, that there-ness also that the snake enjoys also belongs to the rope. Whereas, so that the attributes of rope are superimposed upon the snake. And then I think it's a snake. It will bite me or whatever it will do to me. So that snakeness is superimposed upon the rope. Thus we must understand there is a mutual superimposition. Something about the rope is superimposed upon the snake, and something about the snake is superimposed upon the rope. Technically speaking, we have what we call samanya jnana about the rope. Samanya amsha is known, rope is known in one way that it is there. But Vishesha Amsha, that this is rope, that Vishishta aspect is not known. And that is where the adhyasa or superimposition takes place. Very unique condition is where the adhyasa will take place, where the Samanya Jnanam is there, but Vishesha Jnanam is not there. Something is there, but that it is rope is not known, and therefore, in that Vishesha, we superimpose the Vishesha of the snake, and thus I say, this is a snake. When I make a statement, this is a snake, that this pronoun belongs to the rope, and the snake is something that is superimposed upon the Vishesha aspect or specific aspect of that object. Now this everyone knows. It is expected that this is known to everyone. What is adhyasa is known. The question is, can such an adhyasa take place in case of Atma and Anatma? So, adhyasa also is studied in 4 stages. First is what we call akshepa. How can it be? How can there be adhyasa or superimposition between Atma and Anatma? Because for adhyasa or superimposition to take place, certain minimum primary conditions must be satisfied. What is one first primary condition? Sadrusham, the similarity must be there. No one ever superimposes an elephant upon a rope. Hey, I saw an elephant there. In fact, when it turns out to be a rope, I don't think anybody will do that. In the right mind, There are people who see all kinds of things everywhere. But generally speaking, you don't superimpose a silver, for example, where there is rope. We superimpose a snake where there is a rope. Or maybe a garland where there is a rope. Or maybe a stick where it is there. When there is sadrushya or similarity is there. That is the first condition, similarity. And this very condition does not exist between Atma and Anatma. Therefore, there is a question. How can there be adhyasa or superimposition between Atma and Anatma? Yushmat asmat pratyego Vishaya Vishayino Tamah Prakashavad Viruddha Swabhavayo Itaretara Bhavanupatto Siddhayam. It is always understood. Can there be a superimposition between light and darkness? That I see light where there is darkness, I saw darkness where there is light, unless I am an owl. It's not possible that one can see darkness where there is light and see light where there is darkness, because they are mutually exclusive things. One cannot be where the other is. And similarly also, the self cannot be where the non-self is, and non-self cannot be where the self is. Why? Because Atma is what? Pratyak, it is inward. Anatma is parag, it is outward, isn't it? Atma is a subject, Anatma is object, therefore it is inward and one is outward. Atma is what? Chetana, it is self-effulgent, conscious. Anatma is what? Jada. So Atma is prakashaka, it is that which illumines, and Anatma is that which is prakasha, that which is illumined. Totally opposite to each other. And Atma ultimately is known to the wise people as I am complete. Anatma is known as karta, bhokta, etc. And these things can never be together. So question, how can there be adhyasa or superimposition between Atma and Anatma? Because the primary conditions of sadrushya, etc. are not satisfied. It is true. इत्यतः अस्मत् प्रत्ययगोचरे विषयिणी चिदात्मके युष्मत् प्रत्ययगोचरस्य विषयस्य तद्धर्माणां च अध्यासः तद्विपर्येण. So there cannot be adhyasa or superimposition of the yushmat, meaning the anatma, non-self, upon the self which is totally opposed, and contrary-wise there cannot be superimposition of atma upon the anatma, because again they are contrary to each other. And therefore adhyasa mithyedi bhavitum yuktam. This adhyasa cannot be. We say you are right. What does the Vedantin say? That is right. It cannot be. Therefore, the introduction to Brahma Sutra begins with a Purva Paksha, begins with an Akshepa, begins with a negation. How can it be? It cannot be. So Vedantins then, but they don't get, don't get bothered or confused. They don't get nervous. They say, you are, you have company, or you are my friend. Says, you are right. It just does not make sense. And still, tathapi, anyonyasmin, anyonyatmakaram, tathapi, yadyapi, mithyayadi bhavidum yuktam. Even though such an adhyasa between Atma and Anatma cannot take place because both are mutually exclusive, both are totally contrary to each other, and therefore there cannot be this superimposition between one and the other, and still we find people claiming themselves ahamidam mamayadamiti. And still we find people claiming them to be what? Manusyoham, I am a man, or I am a human being. Mamedam, this body is mine. This is what we find people doing. How about that? So even though logically it does not make sense that one can superimposition non-self upon the self and self upon non-self, logically it just doesn't make sense at all. Tathapi, even then, we do find people loka vyavahara. What do people proclaim themselves to be? Ahamidam, I am man. Mamedamiti, this is my body. That I am blind, I am deaf, I am this and that. So we find people expressing themselves in this manner. Therefore, even though it does not make sense, we have to accept that adhyasa is. So after questioning adhyasa, then adhyasa is sambhavana, or the possibility of adhyasa is shown. By first explaining what is adhyasa. So akshepa, lakshana, sambhavana and pramanam. In 4 ways the treatment of adhyasa is given in the adhyasa bhashya. Akshepa is first questioning, logically. Then lakshanam, what is adhyasa? Atasmin tad buddhi or smriti rupaha paratra purvadashta bhasa. So that which is smriti rupaha means smaryamana sadrusha. These words are also, they need a lot of analysis. But idea is, adhyasa is superimposing something that you have known in the past, of which the samskaras are there in your mind, and that perception or the sight of that object brings up those samskaras, and that is how you create or superimpose that snake upon the rope. And so, seeing one thing where it is not is the primary definition of adhyasa. Seeing one thing where it is not. Anyatra anyabhasaha. Seeing one thing where it is totally non-existent. And he says, this can also happen in case of self. This kind of an adhyasa can happen. There is no need to have sadrusya, there is no need to have anything. Then you give illustration to show that there is no need that there must necessarily be a sadrusya or a similarity between the two for the adhyasa to take place. All that you need is samskara. In the past also adhyasa was there, and so the same samskara or the habit continues. And how did it happen in the past? Because of the past. How did that happen then? So it is anadi. Anadihi, anantaha, I am adhyasa. This adhyasa is anadihi, ananta. By anadi, Vedantins then escape the need to explain anything. They don't escape, they don't bother to explain. So you can't explain the thing because it is inexplicable. We don't say that the samsara is. If you could explain it, that means it is there. In which case it becomes real. We don't say it is there. You say that there is this. Therefore, we can give you an explanation. Or try to give you. In fact, there is no logical explanation for anything in the creation. Because the very cause is ignorance, which doesn't make sense. So nothing in the world makes sense. If it makes sense, then you must be really a smart person. If anything makes sense in the world. Although we bring out some sense in order to do vyavahara, but ultimately, really speaking, nothing makes sense at all. That is why it is called mithya. So we are not obliged to give any explanation for what is mithya. And if you want explanation, this is anadi, use the word. But you can't really conceptualize that. So it's a word alright, which doesn't really can create any concept in your mind. That's why logicians don't like these kind of things. They get totally nervous about these things. Vedantis don't get nervous because logic is, nothing is logical. Adhyasa is not logical. So this is how it is only by a matter of experience. We cannot dismiss what we experience, and therefore we have to accept a phenomenon called adhyasa. That we do find people superimposing the body and the attributes of the body upon the self and claiming themselves to be sthuloham, krushoham. I am fat, I am lean, I am fair, I am dark. That shows that a person is superimposing the attributes of body upon the self. Kanoham, badhiroham. That shows that people, when they claim themselves to be blind or deaf, that means that they are superimposing attributes of indriya or the sense organs upon the self. Sukhiyaham, dukkhiyaham. When I say I am happy and unhappy, that shows that the attributes of mind are superimposed upon the self. This is what is there. That means that adhyasa is there. Another question was subsequently also discussed. That is discussed later on, is whether Brahma is prasiddham, aprasiddham va. And so, whether Brahma is prasiddham, is it known or it is unknown? That comes in the first sutra. But as far as adhyasa is concerned, the pramana is pratyaksha pramanam is given. That it is a matter of experience. That's all the evidence that we have. Even wise people also, in them we also find. In Pashu, in the animals we find adhyasa. Animals habitually behave, and animals are habitually attracted towards that which is conducive, and they naturally desist from that which is threatening. And similarly we find people also doing that. They turn away from that which is a threatening situation, and they naturally move towards something that is conducive or inviting. And therefore we find that the vyavahara of the any human beings is similar to the vyavahara of the Pashus. And we know that the animals necessarily take the body to be the self, and since we find similar vyavahara in the human beings also, therefore we show that human beings also take the body to be the self, and definitely body is not the self, and therefore there is this adhyasa. And therefore Atma, which is in fact Brahman or limitless, is taken to be limited, and therefore that is a notion which is a product of adhyasa. And therefore it is anartha hetuhu. This is the cause for all the suffering. This adhyasa or mutual superimposition between Atma and Anatma. This also Atma is superimposed upon Anatma. This body is taken to be the self. Body is taken to be real. Body is taken to be very dear to me because these are the attributes of Atma which are superimposed upon the Anatma. And this is how the Atma, Anatma, Aviveka is there. And therefore what is required is Viveka Jnanam or discriminative knowledge between the self and the non-self. And this is how by Adhyasa Bhashya Shankaracharya establishes that how there is the Aikya or the identity between Jiva and Brahma can be there, is there or can be there, and still one can take one thing to be other than what it is because of Adhyasa. So there is a phenomenon called Adhyasa on account of which a person takes Atma to be limited even though it is limitless. Or so therefore it gives validity or it gives credence to the scriptures. So Vishaya is Brahma. Prayojanam, Moksha. Because the bondage is a product of ignorance, and therefore when the ignorance goes, then the bondage also goes. So Prayojanam is Moksha, that also is established. So Adhyasa enables us to establish what we call Vishaya and Prayojanam, the subject matter and the purpose. Two important things are established. Then we can proceed to study. Then comes the first sutra, Athato Brahma Jignasa. Atha, Ataha, Brahma Jignasa. These are the three words. Now, then Shankaracharya shows how that first word Atha establishes what we call Adhikari. Who is a student who is qualified? The meaning of the word Atha is thereafter. The word Atha can have different meanings, but Shankaracharya shows how other meanings are not applicable. In this particular context, the only meaning that is applicable is thereafter. Anantaryam. Anantaryam means thereafter. So thereafter. So when thereafter I ate, thereafter I went, thereafter something happened. When you make a statement like that, then somebody says, what do you mean thereafter? After what? So if you want to arouse curiosity in the person, then you can make this kind of statement. You know, then I drove the car, or then I entered the plane. Then means when? Then therefore you must also say something which must have happened before for this particular incident to happen. Thereafter he ate. But I thought this Devadatta is in Bombay. You said that he ate in your place. How is it possible? That means he must have come here. So here also, thereafter the deliberation upon Brahman, that shows that some condition must precede the deliberation. Something must have happened before deliberation upon Brahman starts. What is it? So Shankaracharya says, Atha, thereafter means something must have happened. What must have happened? We said yesterday that certain lifestyle is definitely required, certain values are required, but all of them create what we call a maturity. An emotional maturity and an intellectual maturity. When they have arisen, then alone the jignasa or the desire to know Brahman arises, and then alone vichara or deliberation upon Brahman can take place. So what is the peculiar condition when jignasa or desire can arise? That is indicated by atha. That's why Sutrakara says Brahma jignasa and not Brahma vichara. Because the jignasa or desire to know Brahman, thereafter, therefore, the desire to know Brahman. That shows that desire to know Brahman automatically occurs when certain condition is satisfied. As we said, any desire will occur when a proper condition is satisfied. Desire for eating food will occur when the phenomenon of hunger takes place. Desire to enter the car will be there when I want to go from one place to another. So desire occurs when a certain proper condition is satisfied. And similarly also, what should be that condition in which desire to know Brahman arises? How come it does not arise in ordinary people? That is because that maturity is not there. So when that maturity is created, automatically desire to know Brahman arises. And that is suggested here as sadhana chatusya sampatti. Viveka nityanitya vastu viveka iha mutrada phalavhoga viraga samadhi shatka sampatti mumuksha viveka vairagya. When one has led a certain kind of a life, so before that dharma must be there, meaning one must have led a life of dharma or life of virtue or righteousness or life of values. But we find that some people seem to exhibit this desire to know even before having entered the life at all. That shows that perhaps they must have inherited the samskara from the past life. So it is true that one must follow the life of dharma. But then, whether dharma or the righteous life must have been lived either in this birth or in the past birth. That's the reason why we find that some people exhibit this kind of samskaras even at a very young age. Without having gone through the experience of life, they really have a vairagya for life, not a disgust for life, not an aversion for life, but a maturity. Some people seem to exhibit that maturity at a much younger age than others. That shows that whatever is required for that maturity to be there must have been acquired in this life or perhaps in the past life. And what can it be? It can only be the performance of karma or dharma. That when one has lived the life of dharma or the life of value and duties, then it creates a purification of the mind, and it is that purification which is what will automatically bring about the desire to know Brahman. So atha suggests what? An adhikari who possesses the right frame or disposition of mind on account of having lived a certain kind of life, either in this life or in the past life. So adhikari, bhava, the question, the shastra should not be studied if the adhikari or the student who is qualified is not stated there. So what atha states here, the adhikari or the qualified student. Ataha, therefore. What do you mean therefore? So that means that since when one has this qualification or when one has this kind of purity of mind, since the desire to know Brahman arises, therefore the vichara of Brahman must be done. That ataha goes with what? Brahma vicharah kartavya. Yataha Brahma jignasa asti, tataha Brahma vicharah kartavya. Since desire to know Brahman arises when a person has that purification of the mind, therefore in order to satisfy that desire, Brahma vichara or deliberation upon Brahman must be performed. Ataha, since the scriptures also reveal, and one also will learn from one's own experiences, that whatever is achieved as a result of an effort is going to be limited in time, limited in place, and what one is seeking is limitless, and therefore there arises a vairagya or dispassion for all limited ends, and therefore a dispassion for all the means for achieving those ends. And since this happens, therefore the Brahma vichara kartavya, one should perform a deliberation upon Brahman. So Brahma jignasa is Brahmana jignasa, a desire to know Brahman or Brahma vichara. So Brahma vishayaka vichara. Here Shankaracharya shows that Brahman is the object or the Vishaya of Jignasa. Jignasa or the desire to know Brahman, where Brahman is the subject of desire or subject of knowledge. This is how the first sutra has been explained. Atha shows the adhikari. Ataha shows the condition that naturally occurs. And therefore, Brahma Jignasa Kartavya, meaning Brahma Vicharaha Kartavya. Also, there is a discussion here. When you say an inquiry must be performed with reference to Brahman, then a deliberation upon Brahman will automatically involve deliberation upon things related to Brahman. If you want to know a person, then you will also find out where is he born, who was his father, what is the parentage. So all the different things also you want to know in order to know a given person. So a deliberation upon a thing automatically involves deliberation or inquiry upon things related to that. And similarly also, deliberation upon Brahma will also require a deliberation upon things related to that vichara. Namely, Pramanam, what is the means for knowing Brahman? Lakshanam, what is the nature of Brahman? What is the characteristic of Brahman? So all those questions will naturally arise, and therefore an inquiry into Brahman is also going to involve an inquiry or deliberation upon the Lakshana, meaning the characteristic or definition of Brahman. The Pramanam, what is the means of knowledge of Brahman? The Yukti also, meaning the reasoning that is involved. All that deliberation also will be involved. So Brahma Jignasa or desire to know Brahman also automatically includes desire to know that which is the means of knowledge of Brahman, desire to know that which leads me to knowledge of Brahman, and all those other inquiries are also included. And finally, another question was also discussed in the first sutra, and that is whether tat punar brahma prasiddham aprasiddham va syat. The question is Brahman known or unknown? Before you proceed to deliberate upon Brahman, the question is Brahman known or unknown? If Brahman is known, then there is no need to deliberate upon it because it is already known. And if Brahman is totally unknown, and then nobody will even think of deliberating upon that. Understand? Nobody thinks of inquiring about Timbuktu. What happened in Timbuktu? I never know that such a thing as Timbuktu. What does Gagabugan look like, Such an object is not known. So when something is totally unknown to us, a desire to know that will not arise that, or a deliberation upon that cannot be when a thing is totally unknown to me. And there need be no deliberation when a thing is already known to me. This is a very unique thing. It says Brahman prasiddham aprasiddham va. Is Brahman already known or Brahman is unknown? The Purva Pakshi is always waiting, seeking for an opportunity to frustrate you in some way or the other. He says, no, we don't think that you should bother about this study of the scriptures. Do you know Brahman or not? Yes, I know. Then why do you study? I don't know Brahman. Then you don't know what Brahman is. What does it matter? If Brahman is totally unknown, it will never become, one will have no curiosity about it. When do we have curiosity? When something is known to us. Who is that person who came yesterday? That curiosity will be there when I know that person. Otherwise there is no curiosity. So far I never knew there is a place called Chandra Colony, So there was no curiosity to know where it is. No, today I keep on wanting to wait a minute, where is the shopping center and how to go in and what to do? Because now it is known. So there cannot be a curiosity about something which is totally unknown to me. Is Brahman totally unknown to me? Then there cannot be curiosity. If Brahman is known to me, then also there is no need. So Brahman falls in a unique category, that is prasiddham as well as aprasiddham. Brahman is known and still not known. We already said here that the rope is known and still not known quite. Rope is known generally, but not known particularly. So when the general knowledge is there, but the particular knowledge is not there, then alone adhyasa or superimposition can take place, and then the knowledge of the Vishesha or the particular aspect will only dispel that ignorance. Therefore, the object is known as something is there, but not known as rope. Therefore, it is taken to be snake, and therefore, the knowledge of the Vishesha that this is rope will dispel the ignorance and eliminate the notion of snake, and that is how also eliminate all the consequences of that false knowledge. Similarly also, Brahman is known because Brahman is the very self, and everyone knows the self. That I am, minimum thing that I know is what? I am. Nobody ever takes the self to be not being there. So I am, or that I am aware of a conscious being, this is known to me. Aham asmi sadabhami, I am there, I am conscious. In that sense, I is always known because it is self-effulgent, and since Brahman itself is I, therefore Brahman is known in general. However, I do not know that I is limitless, and therefore that particular knowledge of I is not there. Samanya jnanam, that I am, is there, but Vishesha jnanam, that I am nitya shuddha buddha mukta svabhava, that is not there, and therefore in that Vishesha aspect all the superimpositions are taking place, and therefore it is that Vishesha aspect of what I that is to be deliberated upon. Not the deliberation, am I there or not? One need not deliberate. Am I conscious or not? One need not deliberate. But am I limited or not? That one needs to deliberate. Am I bound or not? That one needs to deliberate. There is no need to deliberate whether I am or not, because it is already known to me. But there is a need to deliberate whether I am limited or not, because that is where the knowledge is not. And so Brahman is prasiddham, is known also because it is a self. Aprasiddham, it is unknown also because I do not know that it is myself. I do not know that I am Brahman, and therefore that deliberation of vichara is to be done. And that is how the need to study the scriptures has been established by the first sutra, Athato Brahma Jignasa. Therefore, it serves as what we call introduction to the whole scriptures. I will take time here to read the bhashya of the first sutra. That will also refresh our memory, and you will see the point that we discussed. It is on page 65 of this book. वेदान्तमीमांसा शास्त्रस्य व्याचिख्यासितस्य इदमादिमं सूत्रम् अथातो ब्रह्मजिज्ञासा तत्र अथ शब्दः आनन्तर्यार्थः परिगृह्यते न अधिकारार्थः ब्रह्मजिज्ञासायाः अनधिकार्यत्वात्. So atha shabda anantaryartha parigrashyate. Atha should mean anantaryam, it should mean thereafter. Na adhikarartha, not a commencement or beginning, because Brahma jignasa or jignasa cannot be begin. And therefore atha should mean anantaryam, it should mean thereafter. Mangalasya cha vakyarthe samanvaya abhavat. Different meanings of the word atha are there. One meaning is mangala also. Shankaracharya says that atha need not mean mangalam because its very utterance itself creates mangalam, and therefore there is no need to say that mangalam atha, because that mangalam is created by the very utterance of that word. And arambha also is not there, nor is to be understood as prashna, is to be understood as anantaryam. अर्थांतर प्रयुक्त एव हि अथ शब्दः श्रुत्या मंगल प्रयोजनो भवति पूर्व प्रकृत अपेक्षायाश्च फलतः आनन्तर्या व्यतिरेका सति च आनन्तर्यार्थत्वे यथा धर्म जिज्ञासा पूर्ववृत्तं वेदाध्ययनं नियमेनापेक्षते एवं ब्रह्म जिज्ञासापि यत्पूर्ववृत्तं नियमेनापेक्षते तद्वक्तव्यम्. To say it that when you interpret Atha as Anantarya, thereafter, then naturally it creates a desire to know what must have preceded, and therefore it brings about the same result, and therefore Atha meaning Anantaryam or thereafter, that alone is the most appropriate meaning in this case. And when that is the meaning, then we have to understand, we have to then know what is it that is preceded, what is it that precedes here, what is it that must have happened for the Brahma Jignasa to take place. Yat purvurtam niyamena apekshate, that what must have necessarily taken place for Brahma Jignasa to arise, what must necessarily take place. Lot of things should take place, may take place. But what must necessarily take place? You must be born, first thing. You must be thinking, of course. And all these things must have taken place, no doubt. That you must be speaking and talking and reading and writing and stuff like that, But then what must necessarily take? There are many people who are born, many people who write, many people who speak, and still they don't have Brahma Jignasa. So what is that distinguishes one person from the other? That one has Brahma Jignasa, others do not have. That peculiar thing or that unique thing which must necessarily be there, which is what is implied by the word Atha, that must be stated. So different suggestions are given. People with different interests will give different suggestions. And we have to see whether those suggestions are applicable or not, you see. Mimamsakas are there waiting to give you suggestions to draw you. Tarkikas will give you some other suggestions, and therefore you have to analyze those suggestions. And therefore, here the different, what is it that must have preceded? Then different suggestions come here. Swadhyayanantariyantu samanam. Okay, that one must have studied the script Vedas, that is there, is accepted. And that he will study anyway, because he is born and therefore he will be sent to school regardless of that. The Sutrakara need not have to say something which will be done by other people or which will be naturally done. So, Samanam, that Dharma Jignasa also requires Swadhyaya and Brahma Jignasa also requires. So, okay, then we'll suggest something else. Says here, Nanu iha karmavabodhanantaryam Visheshaha. So Purva Mimamsaka says, that means that you must have studied the Dharma Shastra. You must study Dharma Shastra before Brahma Jignasa arises. And after that, if you say, yes, Dharma Shastra should be studied, then you must have performed that Dharma also, they will tell you. So the suggestion is that one must have studied the Dharma, Nitya, the Karma, etc. Nitya, Naimittika Karma and all of that must be studied. And they must be also implemented and performed. Then Brahma Jignasa can arise. They don't want that you should bypass that. They don't want that you should bypass karma. So this trend of discussion will always remain all along. Some people pushing for karma. Not that Vedantis are pushing for knowledge. But they say you need not push for that which is not necessary. That's all. Keep it simple. Don't complicate the things. Vedantis are not opposed to karma. At the same time, they say that karma has a role to play, and when that role has been played, then you need not keep it on. When you want to cross the river and go to the other bank, because you want to go to a temple for darshan, therefore you take a boat, and with the help of the boat you cross the river. But just because the boat was so kind to enable you to cross the river, therefore I feel a sense of obligation, so I carry the boat with me wherever I go. That's not necessary. So boat has served the purpose, and that's fine. Similarly, karma has a purpose to serve. But had that purpose being served, there is no need that karma being performed per continued because it becomes a burden. Inasmuch as it becomes an obstacle to the very pursuit of knowledge of Brahman. If it is not an obstacle, you don't mind. But it becomes an obstacle. That board, to carry that burden on your head, becomes an obstacle. Therefore you should leave it. Your chappals you carry on, because they are not an obstacle, they are helpful. Of the karma also, certain things you can carry. Karma of serving the teacher, you continue. Or serving God also, you may continue. things which are helpful in studying the scriptures, Shamadhi Shatka Sampatti, in order to perhaps polish up your personality, whatever is required, you continue. But other things become burdens or obstacles, and therefore they should not be continued. This is what the Vedantins wish to say, and they don't like that. They don't like that karma should ever be given up. They are quite convinced that karma is the means for the moksha. According to them, jnanam is subsidiary and karma is primary. Vedantins say that knowledge is primary, action is something that is subsidiary or supporting. This is where the main difference comes. In our own personality also, what is important? The jnanendriyas are important or karmendriyas are important? Organs of perception are important or organs of action? Here also you will find that all the perceptual faculties all are on the top, on the head, Eyes and ears and all of these are on the top. All the organs of action are below. Not that that necessarily is a criterion. But the thing is, unless you know something, you can't do anything. Action cannot be performed. You can't even ride a bus unless you know which bus you have to go by. You cannot walk unless you know in which direction you have to walk. Every action necessarily presupposes the knowledge, because without the knowledge, action cannot be performed. And therefore knowledge must precede. Knowledge is primary. And that is how, since ignorance is a problem, it also depends upon the perception of the problem. If you think that moksha is something to be achieved, definitely karma becomes a means. If you say that moksha is already an existing fact and therefore it is to be known, then knowledge becomes the primary means. Inasmuch as ignorance is the problem, therefore knowledge becomes the primary means. This is what the Vedantins want to say. It generally appears as though the Vedantin teachers always seems to dismiss karma. They don't dismiss anything. We don't dismiss anything. We just want to know what is the place of everything. So our perception is that the problem of samsara or sadness in life is the product of ignorance and not the product of something real. Samsara is not real. It is mithya or product of ignorance, and therefore knowledge alone can eliminate samsara. And therefore knowledge is the primary means. And knowledge requires certain conducive conditions, certain disposition of mind. It requires a mind at leisure, mind which is free from other demands, and therefore it must be free from the sense of duty. Therefore a person must be relieved from the obligations and obligatory duties. Therefore karma sannyasa is not required. Karma sannyasa is not the rejection of karma. Karma sannyasa is growing out of karma. Sannyasa is always interpreted as rejection. Sab chhod ke. So always we believe that when a sannyasi, he walks out, meaning he kicks everything. He doesn't. He doesn't reject anything. If he rejects something, that means some dvesha is involved, and therefore it's not vairagya. So vairagya is freedom from both raga and dvesha. So in sannyasa there is no karma tiraskara, but there is a higher value placed to knowledge. That he is now, whatever karma had to do, that has been done, and now he is seeking something better, something higher. However, this is, Shankaracharya will have to contend with this, because there was such a strong current of the Mimamsakas or the people who were just fanatic about karma. And perhaps that was necessary because Buddhas rejected that. So in order to reject Buddhism or drive away from here, it was necessary to emphasize karma and Veda and everything. But then that itself becomes a burden. What happens is, you take some medicines in order to drive away the disease, then that medicine itself will create some other reactions. And therefore you must give up that medicine also sometime. Similarly, karma is required to grow. But having performed that role, then karma also should be given up. This is to be understood. And so the discussion that follows has this thing in there, that this is a technical discussion. Right now, the discussion is not pertaining to whether karma is a means or not. Discussion is pertaining to the sūtra itself. And so whether the anantaryam is, whether karma is the unique factor required or something else is a unique factor. We are seeking asadharanam karanam. When anantarya is there, what is the necessary condition that should be satisfied? That is what we are searching for. and karma is not the most necessary condition. There is something that is more necessary than karma, and therefore that should be understood by atha or anantarya. And that's the point that is made here further. Dharma jignasayah pragape adhita vedantasya brahma jignasopapattehe. Says even before once entering the grahastha ashrama, we find that at the young age, of course it is necessary that the Vedas are studied. We find that brahmacharis who have studied the Vedas and not yet entered grahastha ashrama, they also very often show a desire to know the truth. And therefore, it is not necessary for them to go through that process. Because after all, grahastha ashrama also is for growth. And vanaprastha ashrama also is for growth, not just to engage the person so that the world work goes on. Grahastha ashrama and vanaprastha ashrama also meant for the growth of the person. If somebody already shows that growth, then he need not go through that. So he says some people do exhibit the necessary maturity even before entering the grahastha ashrama. Therefore, we cannot say that when they say karma, they also mean grahastha ashrama, because nobody other than grahastha can perform karma. Nobody is qualified. Nobody has the resources. Brahmachari cannot perform karma other than his sandhya vandanam, etc., which doesn't require any material. A vanaprastha cannot perform karma because he also doesn't have anything. Only one who can perform karma is grahastha. So when you accept the need for karma, you will have to accept the need for grahastha ashrama also. All that is implied there. So yes, Shankaracharya says that many people, having studied the Vedas, but before entering the grahastha ashrama also show or exhibit that keen desire for knowledge. Therefore we cannot say that grahastha ashrama or performance of nitya naiminiya karma is a necessary condition. So there is no niyama here that it must necessarily, grahastha ashrama must necessarily be there. It's fine if it is there, need not be necessarily there. Yatha cha hrudayadyavadananam anantarya niyamaha kramasya vivakshitatvat na tatha iha kramo vivakshitah शेष शेषित्वे अधिकृताधिकारे वा प्रमाणाभावा धर्म ब्रह्म जिज्ञासयोः. Okay, says here that there is no rule here that the karma necessarily prepares one for brahma jignasa, that one can inherit the samskaras, and therefore there is no krama or the necessary order. That order is not necessary, and therefore, if it is not necessary, that cannot become the most important or the invariable factor. Karma is not the invariable factor. Also says, Dharma Brahma Jignasayoho Phala Jignasya Bhedacha. He says, what does Dharma produce and what does Brahma Jignasa produce? The result are totally different. The Vishaya also is different, the result also is totally different, and therefore they are not compatible to each other, and therefore there cannot be a rule that one must precede the other one. That's what is being explained. Abhyudaya phalam dharma jnanam tacca anusthana peksham nishreyasa phalanto brahma vijnanam nacha अनुष्ठानान्तरापेक्षम भव्यश्च धर्मः जिज्ञास्यः न ज्ञानकाले अस्ति पुरुषव्यापारतन्त्रत्वात् इह तु भूतं ब्रह्म जिज्ञास्यं नित्यत्वात् न पुरुषव्यापारतन्त्रम्. So dharma creates what we call abhyudaya, material prosperity. Brahma jnanam creates what we call nishreyasa, moksha, and therefore the phala is different. Dharma or punya pava is something that is produced in future, whereas knowledge is something that is now. So dharma is for the future and Brahman is something that is now. And therefore also Jnanam and karma also are different in as much as karma depends upon the will of the person, the knowledge does not depend upon the will of the person. Knowledge is determined by the very object, while karma or the action is determined by the person. In that sense also, the characteristics are different. Therefore, there cannot be a rule that the karma must necessarily precede jnanam. Then says further, chodana pravritti bhedacha yahi chodana धर्मस्य लक्षणं सा स्वविषये नियुञ्जाना एव पुरुषम् अवबोधयति ब्रह्मचोदना तु पुरुषम् अवबोधयत्येव केवलम् अवबोधस्य चोदना अजन्यत्वात् न पुरुषः avabodhe niyujyate. Says the way both of them are, the instructions are also of different nature. That which is what we call dharma, which is of the nature of vidhi and nisheda, do's and don'ts. So dharma is of the nature of instruction, do's and don'ts. When those instructions are given, it automatically creates in a person also a tendency to do something. So it always engages person into activity. Whereas Brahma, the knowledge, does not engage a person into activity. On the other hand, it releases him from all the activity subsequently. Therefore also they are quite different in nature. Yatha akshat sannikarshena avabodhe tadvata. In general, for example, when the eyes create the knowledge, perceptual knowledge of an object, you just know. Whereas when an instruction is given, there is always a desire to do something. Knowledge does not create any desire or anything, it just reveals the thing as it is. Therefore, the will of the person is not involved. In case of karma, the person's will is involved. Therefore, it is shown here that atha does not imply dharma jijnasa because it is brahma jijnasa. So, knowledge of Brahman is not compatible to the performance of karma. And therefore, it is something else which must be compatible to the desire for Brahman. You cannot say that if you perform your nitya naimiti karma, that necessarily Brahma jijnasa will arise. What is it that will necessarily create Brahma jijnasa? That should be stated. We do not say that dharma has no role to play. But only when dharma creates that maturity, then alone Brahma jijnasa will arise. So it is that maturity that is important. It is true that to gain that maturity, it is necessary to follow dharma. But then you cannot say that dharma alone will necessarily create Brahma jijnasa. It is maturity that will create Brahma jijnasa. If that maturity is there, then dharma is not necessary. If you accept that dharma is necessary, then whether a person is mature or not, you have to go through that thing. He says, no, it is maturity that is necessary, qualification necessary, and dharma cannot be said to be necessarily a preceding condition. Therefore, tasmat kimapi vaktavyam yadanantaram brahma jijnasa upadishyata iti. Never that which must necessarily precede brahma jijnasa, that must be stated. And what is it? Uchyate nitya nitya vastu vivekah iha mutrartha phalabhoga viragah shamadamadi sadhana sampata mumukshutvancha teshu hi satsu pragavi dharma jijnasayaha urdhvancha shakyate brahma jijnasitum jnatuncha na viparyaye tasmat atha shabdena yathokta sadhana sampatyanantaryam upadeshyate. So says it is this sadhana chatushtaya sampatti, viveka vairagya, samadhi satika sampatti, mukshutvam. When they are there, Brahma jijnasa necessarily arises, and when they are not there, Brahma jijnasa will not arise. If they are there, even if dharma is not there, then also Brahma jijnasa will be there. And when they are not there, even if dharma is there, then also Brahma Jignasa will not arise. And therefore, what is the necessary condition that must have taken place before the arising of Dharma Jignasa or Brahma Jignasa? And that is this Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampatti. And therefore, this word Atha, which indicates Anantaryam or an occurrence before, shows that the Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampatti must have been there in a person, and then alone the desire to know Brahman arises. And therefore, Atha therefore indicates what? The Adhikari, Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampanna Adhikari. So word Atha is explained in this manner. Then the word Atha is being explained. Atha Shabdaha Hetvarthaha Yasmad Ved Eva Agnihotrādīnām Shreyas Sadhanānām Anitya Phalataṃ Darshayate Dadyatheha Karmashito Lokah Kshiyate Evameva Mutra Punyachito Lokah Kshre Ityadihi Tatha Brahma Vijñānādapi Param Purushartham Darshayate Brahma Vidāpnoti Paramityādihi Tasmāt Yathokta Sadhana Sampatyanantaram Brahma Jignāsa Kartavya. Atha Shabda hai Hetvartha, shows Hetu or a cause, reason. Yasmat, Atha means what? Tasmat. So Yasmat, why? Because of something. Yasmat, because Veda eva Agnihotrādīnām Shreya Sadhanānām Nitya Phalatāṃ Darshayati. Veda itself says that all the Agnihotrādi karma which are supposed to bring about the welfare of the individual, but they bring about welfare all right, but still the result is going to be limited. Just as the results achieved as a result of karma in this world are limited, so also suppose you go to heavens as a result of performance of punya karma, that also is going to be limited. And therefore Veda itself shows, in this case Chandogya Upanishad, as to how the result of the karma is limited. Veda itself reveals the limitation of karma. Mundaka Upanishad also. And also Veda says, similarly also Veda says that by Brahma Vijnanam alone one can attain the Nishreyasa. Brahmavit apnoti param. Param or limitless can be attained only by the knowledge of Brahman. So Veda itself very clearly says that the karma and the results are limited, and knowledge brings about what we call the limitlessness. Since this is very clear in the Veda, and since one has studied the Vedas, therefore one will know the nature of karma as well as the nature of knowledge, and therefore Tasmāt Yathokta Sadhana Sampatyanantaram Brahma Jignasa Kartavya. And therefore, when this Sadhana Sampatti arises as a result of performance of karma or otherwise, then one must necessarily give up that karma and one will address oneself to this Brahma Jignasa or Brahma Vicharaha. A deliberation or study of the scriptures must be done. Since one will know, one will have the Vairagya, or one will have discovered the limitation of karma and the need for knowledge by the very study of the Vedas. Therefore, having known that, when that condition occurs, then one must pursue the knowledge of Brahman. So what Atha is explained. Now the word Brahma Jignasa is being explained. Brahmano Jignasa Brahma Jignasa Brahmacha Vakshamana Lakshanam Janmadyasya yataha iti Ata eva न ब्रह्म शब्दस्य जात्याद्यर्थान्तरमाशंकितव्यम्. Brahmana jignasa, Brahma jignasa. Jignasa of Brahman is called Brahma jignasa. That off here is not in terms of the relationship, Shesha, in terms of in the sense of Vishaya. So the desire, Brahma jignasa pertaining to Brahman is called Brahma jignasa. What is meant by Brahma? Desire to know Brahman. What is meant by Brahman? The word Brahma has many meanings. It is Jatyadi, it means Brahman also. Brahma Samaj yesterday, the day for yesterday. So Brahma Samaj, I say, what happened? This Brahmo Samaj has come here? I say, what is this Brahma Samaj? It is Brahmana Samaj. So it is only an association of all the Brahmins in Gujarat. That is Brahma Samaj. In Bengal there used to be Brahmo Samaj, there's Brahma Samaj. So I was a little scared. I said, that moment is coming to Gujarat or what? It is only Brahman Samaj. So Brahma means Brahmin, means Hiranyagarbha, means Veda, means Param Brahma also. What is meant by Brahma here? Says, Brahma is that which is going to define in the immediate sutra, Janmadhyasya. Brahman is that from which is the birth and sustenance and destruction of the universe, which is substratum of the whole universe. It is that Brahman which is meant here because immediately it is defined. Therefore, we should not understand by word Brahman some Brahman or other meanings. Brahma only means Param Brahma or Paramatma. Then says, Brahmana haiti karmani shasthi na sheshe jignasya apekshatvat जिज्ञासायाः जिज्ञास्यान्तरा निर्देशाच्च. So Brahmana, that's the sixth case, all right. But the sixth case is understood in the sense of karma, vishaya, and not in the terms of relationship. Because desire, jignasa or desire to know necessarily requires us to know what? Desire to know automatically raises the question of the object of knowledge, and therefore Brahma jignasa meaning desire, jignasa pertaining to Brahma. And also, this sutra does not mention any other object of knowledge to be inquired into, and therefore Brahma alone being mentioned, that should be the object of inquiry. Okay, this is quite a long one, so I think remaining in a few minutes we'll spend tomorrow with this bhashya, and we'll be able to proceed with the second sutra. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Vadarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmedi Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Atha Om Atha Om Atha Mimamsa Shastrasya Vyachikhyasitasya Idamadimam Sutram Athato Brahma Jignasa. Page 85 of this book. Continuing the discussion on the first sutra. As I said, the first sutra consists of 4 topics called Varnaka. First topic was Adhyasa, to establish the Vishaya and Prayojana. That is the Vishaya, namely Jiva Brahma Aikya. That Jiva or the Atma is indeed Brahman. This is what the Shruti reveals, and that it is feasible. Why is it feasible? Even though it is our experience that I am a limited being, and this experience contradicts the statements of the Shruti, and still my experience can be born of what we call adhyasa or superimposition, and therefore Manusyoham, Kartaham, Bhoktaham, this experience really is not the criterion for me. It is not an experience, it is conclusion as a matter of fact. The conclusion on my part that aham karta, aham bhokta, it is not really the criterion to determine that I am really an limited being, and that indeed Brahma I am, and that this conclusion is born of the superimposition which is a product of ignorance. Thus adhyasa shows the possibility of the validity of what the scripture reveals. And prayojanam, If therefore this sense of limitation of the bondage which I am experiencing or which I am feeling is indeed a product of ignorance and not a reality, then the bondage can be removed by removal of ignorance, and then knowledge becomes a means for removal of bondage, knowledge becomes a means for moksha. And therefore, the study of the scripture which gives me the knowledge of Brahman indeed is proper, because it is the knowledge which is the means for moksha. So, moksha becomes a prayojanam. Thus, Vishaya and Prayojanam. Vishaya is Brahma, Prayojanam, Moksha. Both of these are established by the discussion on Adhyasa. Therefore, a very necessary and required discussion, Adhyasa. Then second question was, is Vedanta Shastra, what we call Upanishad, does it have Gatarthatvam or Agatarthatvam? In what we call Purva Mimamsa, already the whole Veda has been analyzed and discussed, including the Upanishad. And therefore, the analysis or Mimamsa or Upanishads has already been done by the Purva Mimamsakas. Then why do you here proceed to again analyze it? Because the analysis has already been done. And therefore, what's the need for this Shastra called Brahma Sutra, which Uttara Mimamsa, which analyzes again what has been already analyzed? So, Gatarthatvam, since the Upanishads have already been analyzed by the Purva Mimamsakas, and it is a conclusion of the Purva Mimamsakas, the Karmakandis, that Amnayasya Kriyarthatvat Anarthakyam Atadarthanam, that the whole Veda is dedicated, or the Tatparya, the purport of the whole Veda is in karma, and therefore only those statements which give us instruction with reference to karma, which statements are called Vidhi and Nisheda, do's and don'ts, they alone are the valid statements of the Vedas, and those statements which do not relate directly or indirectly to these are useless. Inasmuch as no statement of the Veda can be useless, therefore the Purva Mimamsakas have shown how every statement in the Veda everywhere is either directly or indirectly related to the Vidhi and the Nisheda. Including the Upanishad, they are also related to the karma indirectly, as much as it talks about the karta, the stuti or the praise of the karta, and thus to enthuse him to perform the action. And this is how they relate the Upanishad also with Karma Kanda, and consider Upanishad or Jnanam as subsidiary to karma. This is their conclusion. So this conclusion has already been arrived at. Then what are you trying to do now? Says, well, that